All right. Welcome, guys. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have 3 minutes, this says.
Oh,
This is going to go
3
really
minutes
quick.
will be tough.
This will go really quick.
Yeah, 3 minutes will be very tough. So in 3 minutes, we don't have time for really much or many questions.
Actually, we're done.
It was so funny last year when I was here the first time. I talked to Till, one of the founders of Pirate, and I was like, hey, I think we need to bring Bracken on stage. And I couldn't tell why, but I thought he would fit, and I hope I will convince you over the next 30 minutes. Now we have 30. And we'll convince you that it's a good thing to listen. And then I shot you an email, I think, really, when I was on the Pirate Summit, and you were responding like, yeah, of course. We talked at the Mobile World Congress again, and in the end, we ended up sitting here, and you flew in from Switzerland. And the first thing, you're the CEO of Logitech, you've been the president at Braun, and you've been at Whirlpool Company, and anything else. What do you do on the startup stage?
It's a great question. You know, I started, I've spent my entire career at big companies, as you know, General Electric and Proctor Gamble and all these really large places. And somewhere along the line, a light went on for me, which was, I guess 2 lights went on. One was that, that big companies actually don't do anything very well. And the irony of the way, for some reason, business communication works is that small companies end up thinking they should be looking at big companies for good ideas. And the truth is, big companies should be looking at startups for good ideas. So that light went on for me. And then the second light that went on for me was, actually, I want to hire entrepreneurs to work in our company because I want it to operate like a series of small companies, not like a big company, because big companies don't do anything well, so except scale. So that's the reason I'm here. I've been going to startup events now for 7 years. I've probably met, I don't think I'm exaggerating, I've probably met 6,000, 7,000 founders personally. We've acquired a lot of companies, and we've hired a lot of entrepreneurs.
So one statement you said when you were at the stage at the Next Web was, I hate large companies. And it's so funny because you're running Logitech, and I think a lot of people here know Logitech and know that it's a bit larger as well. So when you came into Logitech, on the one hand side, not everything was going fine, and you had to do some stuff and restructure. But what was you spent the whole time at large companies, now you say you hate them. So how do you engage, or how do you work in a large company when you say I hate them?
Well, it is true that I really do hate large companies, and I hope that there are probably a few people here who work in a large company and don't take it personally. And you could definitely say that Logitech could be considered a large company, and we are in some ways, and so I hate that about us. So my goal inside of Logitech is to sort of destroy all the bureaucracy and hierarchy that goes with a large company, and try to find a new way for a company that has a scale with $3 or $4 billion to operate not like a typical large company. So that's what we're trying to do. When I came to Logitech, it took me about a year or two of mistakes to figure out. Well, believe me, I've had more than a year or two of mistakes. But it took me a year or two of mistakes to get my formula. So my formula for how to take what I learned in large companies and apply it to Logitech is really simple. If we ever did it in any of the large companies I ever came from, I try not to go there. So I start with, to just getting a small group of people around the dining room table, or the kitchen table, 5 people. And if there's a problem to solve, we're brainstorming it, trying to think through it. And then once we get to the answer, I try to reflect back. What would we have done if I was at X large company? If the answer to what would we have done at X large company is the same as the conclusion that we reached as our 5 people around that dining room table, I say, okay, we've got to start over again because we've gone to the wrong place. And that's worked pretty well. So I've actually tried to forget everything I learned.
Also very interesting. So I called the fireside chat when I was asked why you need to scale small. And I think a lot of startups at some point come to a stage where they bring in bureaucracy, hierarchies, and want to scale fast and quickly. And I really like your approach about that. And I think you have a very cool or some cool opinions on that point. So why do you think you should need to scale small, and how would this look like in your opinion?
And I was not a business major, not a technology person. I was an English major, English literature major when I was in college. So I like words, and small scaling or scaling small. I like that idea. I like that description of what we're trying to do. So the idea is really simple. When I came to Logitech, we had two businesses basically, one really big and one small. And so the really big one incorporated almost the whole company, and it was organized in a big way, which was the classic, triangle. In this big triangle of a big company, at the bottom you have the individual contributors, then you have the managers, then you have the directors and senior directors, then you have the vice presidents, then you have the almost godlike people called the vice presidents or the C-suite, and then you have God himself, which is the CEO. And I hated that structure. So I tried to imagine what would a structure look like if it weren't like that. And I imagined a situation where actually instead of that structure with God at the top and all the worker bees at the bottom, what if you just had nothing in the middle and you had a whole bunch of small teams that all were part of it? And so we've gone from 2 business teams to 27 now, and we were kind of destroying the business into the company into smaller teams. And then we've acquired or built new businesses that are in there too, so they're part of the 27. So I'd say we're still not there yet. We have a long way to go. It still feels too bureaucratic and slow. People are still too worried about their title and not enough about what they're doing, but we're getting there.
So just to give a bit of context why I think Bracken is really smart about decisions he made over the last 8 and 9 years. I think you came into the company and I will just focus on the stock price right now because everybody who thinks about stock price knows what an achievement it is. I think you came in somewhere between $6 and $8 as a stock price, and now you're close to 40 bucks per share. So not too bad to work on that. And you've restructured it. You've at Logitech, you've acquired companies. You've spotted trends. So how do you go for such decisions? Like, how is your decision-making process regarding innovating yourself and working on these problems and strategies?
Well, it's really easy for somebody, with a good story to stand up and talk about how smart they were, but I really didn't have most of what we did in mind when we started. We made mistake after mistake to find our way into where we are today. The few decisions that I got right in the beginning, and I got a few right. The first one that I really got right, which I'd encourage all of you to get right, is I started to think we're not going to be a technology company. We're not going to be a business. We're going to be a design company. And the reason why I started with design was because in my past I'd had several experiences with design. And now design, people talk about design all the time, so it's almost like another kind of BS line that every business person uses. But I don't mean that. I mean really taking seriously you're going to be a design company, and we're not yet. We're about halfway there. And when I say a design company, I mean obviously creating things with the user of your products at the starting point. But I also mean creating. If you need to close your books every month or every quarter, using design to do that. And when I say design, I do not mean the iPhone. It's a marvelous achievement, but unfortunately, it's too perfect. I mean, great design companies are full of imperfection all the time, and they're always trying to change and improve and reinvent. So that decision I definitely got right, and I'm proud of that one. So many of the other decisions I got wrong. But I learned every time, and we all did. I mean, my whole team, and we stumbled our way forward. And a few of the decisions that we wound up making, one was that if we only use the Logitech brand, we'll be restricted by what we can do. So now we've got 5 different brands, and we'll probably have more. A second one was we used to be a peripherals company for PCs. And many of you don't know that we do more than that because we've intentionally tried to use different brands to do different things. But actually, we think of ourselves as a cloud peripherals company. So anything that happens on the cloud, we could peripheralize either with hardware or even with the service to go with it. So, those are a couple of decisions we made, and I guess the other one is this idea that we don't want to act like a typical big company.
So if somebody's at an early stage company right now or running one and wants to scale, so I know you're from a large company and you broke down what you did, but what would you advise? Like, how would you approach that? And I know, as I mentioned, you're at a large company, so you have a different opinion, and this is more like, what can I learn from a large company as a founder, or what shouldn't I learn?
I'm not joking when I say there's not much to learn from a large company. So looking up here and looking for advice from me is a little bit ironic. I guess if I were running a startup, and we have a lot of startups within our company now, first I would probably, scaling is so valuable. So I'm not suggesting that scaling is not important. It's super valuable. I mean, it's maybe the most value-creating thing you can do, aside from reinventing your business on a regular basis, including the first time. So once you've done that, scaling is a big deal. And I guess my advice to you is use the common sense you have on how to scale. There are things that where scaling in a traditional way with that big pyramid I talked about really makes sense, and those are the areas where you're purely executing. For example, a sales force tends to be pretty scaled. You need to be able to scale it where you've got the person or the person who understands how the selling works, has people reporting to them, and then as you get bigger, you often need attention. So it's a big execution machine. So I haven't figured out yet how to sell, how to have a global sales force or even a regional sales force without having a traditional structure. So that might be the only way to do it well. So that's one that probably does make sense. Your sales operation, depending on how you're selling. If you're selling all online, that's a different matter. But so I'd say there are a few things where that kind of scaling matters. The rest of them, I would say, try your hardest to figure out how to scale in a very small way with very small teams. And what is a small team? I don't know. It could be as few as 2 people, as many as maybe 7 or 8. But as you add teams, try not to let the teams get too big or too stacked. And then I guess the other thing that's probably obvious to most of you is, I guess maybe it's not obvious to most of you. Titles are just so terribly destructive and useless, and all they really do is differentiate one job experience from another one. Now the problem is that people use titles in LinkedIn, they use titles in their CV. We use titles to describe who we are and what we do. But boy, if you could build a culture where people are kind of ignoring the title and focusing on the responsibility and the learning, maybe most important of all, you'd be way ahead of 95% of the world.
For me, a good fireside chat, and I talked to the pirate people before, but I didn't talk about how we will manage it exactly when I'm sitting on stage, is about letting the audience ask questions more than I just think of questions that could fit for you. So now we have 17 minutes left, and I would be more than happy to invite you to ask questions. So whoever has a question, please feel free to raise the hand. And Felix looks like he will play as a runner. That's good. Okay. A microphone will be fine. So if you have questions, I would say come to the front, that we don't have to run through all the stuff with the microphone. And it would be great if you have questions and ask them, and not just be shy and I'm like, hey, I don't ask questions right now because I'm sitting in an audience. So do you want to start first? Because there always needs to be a person that's asking the first question. I know you're shocked right now, but I didn't see a volunteer so far.
Who want to ask a question here?
Okay, I'm a journalist. I now have to be very good in asking a very good question. The CEO of Logitech. Thank you for the pressure, by the way.
You're welcome.
I've already told you how many mistakes I make.
Did you do any decisions concerning the actually product development?
Yes. So many. So the first one was when I came, this concept of becoming a design company. We didn't have any designers inside the company. We never had a designer inside the company. So when I came in and started saying we're going to be a design company, I was super naive because I'd had design organizations inside the last 2 places I'd been that reported to me. So I thought everybody will realize this is a really good idea. And when I did, my engineers said, this guy is an idiot. I mean, he doesn't get what we are. You know, we're fundamentally an engineering company. This is a technology company, not a packaging company or a consumer products company. You know, you're going to screw this company up. In fact, we are going to completely become a decoration business, and you're going to totally lose everything that we are. And I realized that I did a terrible job of understanding my peers in the company. So I had to kind of go back to square one and really explain that when I thought about innovation using design, I thought of design as unlocking the power of technology, because great technology is useless if you apply it in a way that's not relevant to the user. And so, so we became an innovation company using design. But that's probably the most important thing I did. But I will say, I think Logitech was always pretty good at design. We just didn't talk about it that way. Maybe we're better at it now, and we probably have a toolkit and capability that we can apply more broadly now, which is good. But that's probably the most significant one.
And what did actually change in the process of the product development? So I believe some UX process, something like that.
The what process?
UX, like more like user feedback in changing the process in the teams, something like that.
Yeah, several things changed. So we have a toll gate process like most companies do that do a lot of innovation. And that toll gate process inevitably has a discovery period, and then a filtering period, and at some point you lock down what you're trying to do, and then you begin to execute, and then you go into, in our case, often it's production. Usually it's a physical production of a product. Sometimes it's a virtual product, and then you launch, and then you learn, and then you fix it, because you never did everything right. So that's kind of the standard process that we always use. In terms of the getting closer to users, I'd say the most significant change we made was at the very beginning of that process, where we made two changes. The first one was at the very beginning of that process, where we really tried to explore more broadly what we were doing than we had before, which I think has unlocked better innovation. The second one, it took us way too long to learn, which was we want all our products to be 5 stars on Amazon. It's so important today, to be rated well in my business in Amazon. So it took us too long, and we started a couple of years ago to develop our own internal process to figure out what will we get when we launch. It was always a launch, and it was a mystery. Well, oh my gosh, they loved it. It was 4.5 star. Oh, this is terrible. It's 3 star. So we finally figured out how to create our own internal process. That's a pretty good proxy for what we'll get.
Do we have more questions in the audience?
We have 12 minutes and 14 seconds.
If you come up with meaningful decisions that are like logical to you, for example, changing Logitech to a design company, like who do you have to onboard with that, especially coming into the company? And what was your process of onboarding these people? Like how did you pitch your idea, or how did you onboard those without doing hierarchical delegation of just do that?
I have I guess 2 answers to that question. The first one was, I'd been running things for a while, but this is my first CEO job. And I one day, after I'd been there maybe a year, I kind of woke up and I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's like being in school and the kids run the school, because we don't have to ask anybody permission. We can do anything we want. And that's a little bit the way it feels to me today. It's super fun. And it if you're in a startup, because you're in the same boat that I am. It's like nobody tells you what you can and can't do. On the other hand, the other thing I learned a long time ago, when I was 18, I was the president of my student body, which, if you're not American, won't mean anything to you, but it means that I was elected by the student body to be in charge of a little governing body that does various things. And what I discovered in that was that very few people in that government group did anything. Maybe if there were 30 people in that group, only 4 of them and me did all the work. And I always thought, God, I can't wait till one day when I'm really working and people are being paid for what they do, unlike these students who are doing it as volunteers. I can't wait till one day when that happens, people will all work, and it'll be great. And then I started working, and I think I was about maybe 30 or 28 or something, and I had my first big job, And And then I realized, you know what? It's always like that. It's always an all volunteer thing. You know, you always have to convince people of what you want to do, and you have to always inspire people to do it well and make them feel part of something bigger than they might otherwise. And so I guess the answer is I always feel like I'm having to explain what we're up to, and hopefully be so enthusiastic and passionate about it that it bleeds into everybody else around me or some people. And it's never good enough. I've never been effective enough at that. And I'll never be effective enough at that. And you might not be either. It's hard. And so you just have to keep going and really believe yourself. And if you don't believe yourself, either get out or change what you're doing.
So this kind of reminds me of the motivational speeches by one of the Microsoft CEOs. Do you think you really, with the inspiring people and saying, like you just said, explaining the way you want to go and trying to motivate them, that it actually raises their productivity?
No, I really don't. You know, it's a good question. I mean, I don't think that standing up in public and getting people excited lasts much longer than when somebody walks out the door. You know, it's like you have a moment of, that was great. And then you walk out, it's like, what did he say again? I can't remember why I was excited. You know, no, I really don't. So I'm not saying it to try to, I don't talk like this to ever, you know, I really don't envision myself as a great motivator. But I do feel excited about what I'm doing. And hopefully, if we get the right set of things in place and people in place, and we got the right mission and purpose, other people will be really excited about it. But no, I don't think public talks are particularly effective. In fact, you know, it's so funny because I've given a few of these speeches you give at a university graduation or something, and it's amazing. I've given some of the most amazing speeches you've ever heard at public, and I guarantee you nobody can remember a single word I said.
So you think that you gave the best speeches, or
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I did.
Joking.
But there's one exception, though. If you've never listened to, how many people here have listened to Steve Jobs' commencement address at Stanford? Okay, that is the exception. That is really an amazing speech. I was kidding about mine, but his is amazing, and you will remember everything he said. I could quote it to you practically. 17 minutes.
So we have 7 minutes and 40. You can start now recalling his speech.
I could. It'd be better to listen to him. He's much better than I am.
I think they have time to search through YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Do we have more people that want to ask a question? Oh, now it's starting. Perfect.
You said you want to have more entrepreneurs in your own company. Is it working, or are they turning into something different when they join?
It's a fantastic question, because it is absolutely working, and unfortunately they are still too often turning into something different. So and if that sounds like a contradiction, I'll explain. So it's working because a lot of my most profitable, fastest growing business is now run by an entrepreneur I hired in. In fact, you know, I was looking for somebody to run it. I was looking for the typical general manager of blah, blah, blah. And this guy reached out to me and said, your recruiter won't give me an interview, and I think I'd be a good person for this job. I said, well, let's meet. In 10 minutes, I said, okay, you got the job. You're right. He'd only run a business that was it was 1/30th the size of the business he's running today. But, you know, you could just tell he had the energy, he had this, the intellect, and he had the experience that we needed. We didn't need people to run a big company. We need people to go make things happen. So that's great. On the other hand, I do hire people, entrepreneurs, in regularly now. Sometimes we acquire them. But if we hire them, I have to be really careful to separate them from everybody else, because unfortunately, if you're an entrepreneur, you quickly learn, I guess, I've never been one, you quickly learn that you really should take the fastest route to get to things. So when I say, hey, I want to create this new business in this area, do you want to? Yes, okay, great, come on in. I'll give you a quick story. This will take 45 seconds. So
Then we have 5 minutes left, that's good.
Then we'll have 5 more minutes. So I hire this guy who is an entrepreneur, and he's only done software, he's only done services online. And I bring him in, and we're going to create this experience that includes hardware, but it's mostly service. So I say, you know, look, this is going to be great. You know, I'm not going to report you into anybody else. I'm going to report you directly to me, which is what I do most of the time. I'm going to meet with you every 3 or 4 weeks. I'm not going to give you a big budget like a venture capitalist does, because I hate that. I'm going to give you enough to get by for the next month or 3 months later. And then we're going to meet regularly. You're going to see how you're doing. So we did that. Within 3 months, I show up in our next meeting, and we've got a long conference room table, and there are little cloths over a whole bunch of things that are obviously there's something under there. There's a reveal that's going to happen, this amazing reveal. So I walk in and I'm like, what is this? And he goes, oh, you're going to love this. Then he starts unveiling prototypes of the product. I'm not going to tell you what it was, of the hardware product. And he says, I started with this, and then I went to that, and then I got to this, and the piece de resistance is this. And I said, I have totally failed you, because if you are even thinking about hardware at this point, after being with the company 3 months, and we don't even know exactly what the experience we're trying to create is, then this company has completely screwed you up. And that's how hard it is to avoid the gravity of whatever the big thing is. And the big thing for us is hardware. So I learned, man, oh man, I have to bend over backwards to protect these people from the disease of going to what we're really, really good at, which is in that case hardware. And so so I'd say it's really working, but it's really hard, and I keep learning every day.
I would love to have your 45 seconds. If all the time 45 seconds for you are 2 minutes in my life, that would be amazing.
Nobody
There was
else
another
feels that way
question.
about me.
Yeah, of course.
So basically I have a question about the new product idea. What is the first team that you go and brainstorm that new product idea? Is it digital or physical? Thank you.
You know, when I first came to the company, it was usually, the new product idea was usually a physical product. And somewhere along the line over the last 7 years, we said, it's not the physical product, it's the experience. So I think that was probably 2 years in. My head of design said, Bracken, quit talking about product, start talking about experience. So we started using the word experience. But we were still leaning toward physical product all the time. And now I'd say within the last 2 years, we're still using the word experience, but now we're really talking about experience. And we've just launched, we've launched several, digital product only now. And I think over the next, 5 years, you'll see us do things that are either completely digital products only, more and more of the time, maybe all the time, or a combination of the two. So yeah, I'd say it starts in both places now.
Regarding this, you can also just search for the next question, and I will ask a question in my case. You started to collaborate with Zoom, for example. So you created hardware for a software company that you collaborated with. How often do you do that, and how do you search for the partners?
We're one of the strengths of Logitech is we've always been sort of a harmless, capable partner for bigger companies. It can't be a mouse company and not be harmless. So we're harmless, but we're very capable, and we work with bigger companies to help them unlock the power of their cloud experience. And so we do that a lot. It's a strength of the company, and so I'd say it's an everyday thing for us.
Hello, my name is Sebastian. So could you please share with us your experience about the radical restructuring of Logitech? Because that's always one of the biggest problems in corporates and big companies, a really radical restructuring of hierarchy or the structure of the company.
I would love to tell you that I have a good answer to that question, and I do not. We did not radically restructure anything. We changed slowly over 7 years. It's not until yesterday that we were 27 different little teams working on stuff. In the beginning, I didn't have the foresight to know exactly where this would go. So I think radical restructuring is really hard. I mean, I've been involved in some pretty aggressive restructuring. When I joined the company, as Fabian said, we did restructure. I wouldn't call it a healthy restructuring. We had to. We had a gun to our head, and we had to take out. We reduced 1 out of 4 vice presidents and 13% of the total workforce. That's pretty radical, but I wouldn't call it a healthy restructuring. I think you're talking about something different, which is how do I reorganize the company so it's more effective and gets different results. And that's super hard, and consulting firms make a living out of telling people how they think you should do that, but nobody really knows how to do it well. So I think the best answer is try to avoid that. Try to constantly restructure yourself all the time. Try to break yourself down on a regular basis and never get comfortable, and redesign and never leave things alone, and try to find pilots here and pilots there, and it will be very chaotic. And that's probably the best thing you could do to avoid a radical restructuring.
So we have 10 seconds left. I'll try to make it short. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you very much for joining on stage, flying in for the Pirate Summit. And if you have more questions, I think you might be around for a few minutes.
Absolutely, for sure. Thank you very much.